In this video, we are going to talk about civil unrest and how it can surprise us with how fast it can make everything change for those who get caught in the crossfire. History teaches us that societal stability is fragile. Even as resilience and recovery are often possible, the immediate consequences of unrest can be devastating. This video examines those potential consequences if the worst-case scenario comes to your door, not to dwell on negativity, but to learn from the past and prepare for the future. It is a focused exploration of potential failures, intended to inspire proactive measures. Are you ready? When it comes to survival, few dangers are so deceptively hidden as those of civil unrest. Unlike natural disasters that have recognizable patterns and can be predictable over time, civil unrest builds slowly and quietly in the shadows. Civil unrest is fueled by a dangerous combination of factors: rising prices, supply shortages, the spread of disinformation, and deliberate political manipulation. These pressures erode social trust and disrupt the routines that provide a sense of security. Society is indeed held together by a thin thread of civility. Are you ready? While studies indicate that early warning indicators of civil unrest do exist and range from food price spikes to social media discord and coordinated activity, these indicators are often ignored until it is too late. And remember, even the most meticulously crafted predictions are subject to the inherent chaos of reality. Readiness and adaptability are as crucial as an accurate prediction. The underlying causes of civil unrest may be complex. The violence often erupts in specific locations, seemingly random street corners, a public plaza, bridges, or a transportation hub like airports. However, these locations are often chosen for their symbolic value, their accessibility, or their potential to disrupt daily life. Civil unrest does not typically manifest as violence, but when it does, it can erupt with shocking speed and intensity, endangering those who live or conduct business in the area. It is necessary to understand that being peaceful does not mean being passive or unprepared. Are you ready? The events of 2020 to 2023 taught us a few lessons. They taught us that readiness is not optional. During the recent pandemic and the enforced lockdown, we witnessed how quickly modern society can break down. The outbreak. At first it was a flu, but people at work continued to get extremely sick and started to miss days. Things got worse. Hospitals started to become filled with people who exhibited symptoms like a lack of a sense of smell, severe flu-like symptoms, headaches, exhaustion, debilitating to an extreme, sometimes terminal. When it became known that the virus was highly contagious and deadly, and transmission of the disease had risen into a worldwide pandemic, the news spread fast. The government, in a panic, stopped international flights, mandated social distancing, and instructed the people to shelter in place. Fear took hold, and everybody rushed to the grocery stores to buy what they could. Resources became scarce overnight. And while toilet paper shortages became a symbol of the panic, and in retrospect a source of comedic relief, the real crisis ran far deeper. Food supplies were depleted fast, medical resources were overwhelmed, and economic survival became uncertain. Before the crisis was over 1 million would die, and the economic and psychological damage that would follow rose to breaking levels. It took weeks for the food supply to begin to stabilize, and even then, food choices were few. Schools were closed and businesses began closing their doors. When the shelter-in-place orders began to be enforced, simple actions like going to the store became a serious risk. A risk of contracting the coronavirus and a risk from law enforcement, with curfew violations carrying fines of up to $1,000 or 90 days in jail. Criminal offenses were later relaxed, but not without first adding to the already high stress and anxiety for those who had no access to, or that could not afford food and other delivery services. The domino pieces that were to ignite the unrest had begun to fall. The broader supply chain crisis that would persist for years to come and affected manufacturing worldwide started. Shipping costs skyrocketed at first and then stopped due to port closures. 700,000 businesses closed in a single quarter. Major freight companies like Amazon temporarily curtailed delivery services in several cities, leading to further supplies delivery delays. Schools closed as mentioned before, and thousands of businesses went out right away, while others temporarily closed. Millions of so-called non-essential workers were furloughed across many industries. In a moment, millions lost their livelihood, many permanently. The widespread job losses, combined with the lockdown-induced isolation, created significant extra time at home to consume social media. The social media binge generated an intense feeling of fear, anger, and resentment. These emotions, and the behaviorally compounded social media content consumption, created conditions that drove more people towards social unrest. The added stress of job losses, the isolation, and mounting death anxiety from the increasing death toll reported provided a backdrop to the impending tragedy of a nation already on edge. Masks were made mandatory. As a preventive measure, masks were made mandatory when out in public. Along with social distancing, it was hoped that the practice would slow down the transmission of the virus. These mandates were adopted as the battle cry for both mainstream political parties, where one party rallied on the side of not wearing masks and the other for wearing them even when alone in their car. These views and the political current that was adopted around them became a point of friction that was felt at airports, at the grocery store, and any place that was made publicly accessible. People holding firmly to their political convictions further slid into their consumption of algorithmically structured social media and vented it on every post, an activity that further guided the algorithm's trends until the unrest inevitably made it to the streets. People getting in altercations over the masks, people getting deboarded from airplanes, people coughing on people, people ridiculing those with and those without masks, people refusing service and people refusing patronage. Facebook groups served as echo chambers for misinformation, rapidly mobilizing nearly 1 million followers and coordinating real-world demonstrations. Most public places were now a battleground for political contention, and social media was ground zero for the polarization of the masses, a vast fertile ground for disinformation, a battleground that further strained the already precarious thread of civility of our society. Are you ready? As fate would have it, a second factor would be thrusted into the national landscape, a factor that would galvanize and ignite the nation: the death of George Floyd. George allegedly bought cigarettes with a counterfeit bill and was arrested, cuffed, and after falling to the ground, a police officer kneeled on his neck until he died. Viral video of Floyd's death showed conflicts with what the police had officially reported. This became known to millions of people quickly. Later, once the trials had concluded, one of the officers was found guilty of murder, and 3 others were found guilty of abetting the murder and of other civil rights violations. The gruesome images of the death of Floyd and the perceived disregard for the rights of people by police ignited millions across the country. Systemic problems. The pandemic disproportionately affected Black and Latino communities who were suffering higher rates of infection, hospitalization, and death. A disproportion that was due to systemic factors like unsafe working conditions, discrimination in healthcare, and residential segregation with poor access to services. Floyd's death occurred within this context, and there was a strong reaction to the murder. Public health officials and ethicists signed open letters arguing that racism itself was a grave public health threat, and that justified the risks of protesting during a pandemic. Thousands upon thousands went out and marched in the streets. The George Floyd protests were coordinated across multiple social media platforms, with activists sharing operational logistics, safety information, and real-time updates. The viral spread of information and disinformation was staggering, with 2 protest-related resource pages garnering nearly 27 billion interactions on Facebook in a single week. The protests and associated civil unrest escalated to localized disruptions that exacerbated the existing pandemic stress. Depending on who you ask, you will get a different answer as to who started the violence. Some say that it was law enforcement who started it, and some will tell you that it was the protesters who started it. Regardless, the protests became centers of dangerous and destructive violence. In some of the neighborhoods that were experiencing the violence, many businesses, including grocery stores, pharmacies, and bodegas, were burned down. Vandalism was everywhere: windows smashed, roads blocked, looting. The disruptions escalated to unimaginable levels. What had begun as peaceful protests in many cities escalated into serious confrontations with law enforcement and anti-riot forces, who deployed tear gas, rubber bullets, flash grenades, and high-pressure water. The protesters threw Molotov cocktails, fireworks, rocks, thrash, and destroyed private and state property. There were severe injuries. There were mass arrests. Entire sections of cities were closed off. Cars and buses were overturned and burned. Businesses were looted and destroyed. Over $2 billion in property damage occurred nationwide, with thousands of businesses destroyed. Are you ready? 2 lethal public health crises had combined: a novel coronavirus and the violent and reckless manifestations against racism and police brutality. The combination of police brutality, the rapid health crisis, and the resulting economic downturn created a triple crisis that overwhelmed the nation's capacity to cope, leading to unprecedented levels of mobilization and civil unrest. Official channels had failed. The nation was brought to a stop while businesses and homes were set on fire. These lessons must be taken to heart. Emergency readiness is not paranoia, it is prudence. On this video, we have looked at some of the factors that made the pandemic period particularly dangerous and provides a framework for recognizing when conditions are deteriorating, giving us little time to prepare before crisis strikes. The pandemic and the associated problems during the period are not the only examples of civil unrest that has swept the nation, and we should be ready for any such event should it ever happen again. It is difficult to anticipate what factors will combine to create a perfect storm, but social media, the overarching effect of the economy, and political talking points are good indicators of upcoming strife. Are you ready?